Good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about brain based learning, differentiation, and engagement. My name is Nixie Sanderson. I am a high school ELAR teacher. I have all four grades. This is my fourth year teaching in a rural setting. I'm currently pursuing my degree, my master's degree in reading literacy for K through 12. Overall goal is to become a reading specialist or interventionist. Although, for the time being, I'm very happy in my classroom and really just want to use this information to just overall be a better teacher for my students. So, to start off, we're going to talk about differentiation. Basically, differentiation is just recognizing that not all brains learn in the same way. May have similar cognitive abilities from student to student, but they may process information in ways that are different. And so, differentiation will play to those student strengths. It presents the information in ways that allow students to process and learn new information in a way that best suits their learning style. There are a few different differences in the brain. The right side of the brain tends to be more your language context, like body language and tone, spatial recognition, and it's the overall holistic um, and abstract processing of information. Your left side of the brain is going to have your more literal interpretation of words. It's going to have time and sequencing, simple computations. It's going to be your analytical side of the brain. There are also, when we start looking at differentiation and the different ways that brains learn, we see differences between the male brain and the female brain. Overall, there's really no cognitive difference between a male brain and a female brain as far as ability goes, but in generalities, there tend to be differences in the way the brains process information. Um, so the female brain is going to be more language oriented. This is partially because of an active language processor in the right hemisphere of the brain in female students. Um, and a higher total gray matter compared to male students. Male students, on the other hand, they are going to be better at the spatial tasks, targeted, directed motor skills. They tend to remember overall gists of a situation, where the female brain is going to remember overall emotion or associations of a situation. And so, while these are generalities, it's also important to remember that it's not going to apply to every student. You're still going to have some male students who are very language oriented and some female students who are not. This is just an overall view. So when we look at strategies for how we can reach students in different ways that allows them to learn in a way that is going to be better for their particular style. One way is to present different perspectives of a subject. So, for example, if we are going to talk about World War II, we may want to start out with the basics of facts, dates, who, what, when, where. Um, and then from there, we build, and maybe we take it into a what if situation, where once we know the facts and dates, we could say, well, what would happen if this had happened instead? This may also be where we could then introduce literature, nonfiction or fictional, that would coincide with the time period that we're reading about. Another way is to look at hands on learning using visuals, charts, diagrams, or manipulatives whenever possible. So, if we were learning about World War II and if we were going to present the different perspectives, what we might do is when we're learning those dates, is we're going to create charts and we're going to add visuals to those charts, maybe pictures or color coding. Another way is to give students choice in the way that they present information. So maybe it's time to do your final project, but maybe you give them options. Maybe one option is writing an essay. I do teach English, so that's something that we do. But another option would be to make a visual presentation. So they still have to show that they learned the facts, but they're able to present the information in a way that best suits their learning style. The second thing we want to talk about today is engagement. Engagement is one of those things that, as teachers, we know it when we see it, right? We know when our students are locked in. Basically, engagement is the result of motivation and active learning. And there are three things: relationships, relevancy, and the overall learning process. So there are three main goals for the brain. It wants to avoid threats, it wants to be happy, and it wants to live better. So if we can cultivate an environment in our classroom that manages to reach those three goals, then we're more likely to bring our students into being engaged with whatever it is that we're trying to teach them in our classroom. So inhibitors that we're going to see to this is mostly just stress. And if we can, school lends itself to having some stress, but if we can eliminate things as much as possible that would be stressors for the students, physical things, emotional stressors, how letting them have the opportunity to fail without it being a big deal, we take away that fear, then that's going to help also increase engagement. Um, Two big things would be one, build relationships. As educators, we hear this all the time. And as educators, I feel like most of us, this is one of the things we're doing day in, day out. If we make our students feel safe, make them feel valued, and it's simple things, it's greetings in the mornings, it's asking them, hey, how did the basketball game go last night? Or that was a great shot because I saw you play last night. Those build relationships. The other thing is to help them seek out novelty. The brain has this center, this reticular activating system that has two jobs. It seeks threats and it seeks novelty. Now, if we've eliminated threats, then it is open to being able to seek out the novelty. This is where those activities that we talked about for differentiation can come in. And they have these novel or interesting ways of learning. And if we can key into that, then they are more likely to be engaged. A few strategies. Already talked a little bit about eliminating the fear in learning. At some point, there is a test, but in the process, when we're practicing and we're trying to learn the information, it's better to be able to do that in a way that if I make a mistake, it's okay. And then I learn from that mistake. Another thing is to ensure responses. I like to do this through Google Classroom, and maybe they have a question, just whatever we were learning about that day, and the response just needs to be maybe a couple of sentences. But it ensures that they at least had to do some amount of thinking about what we talked about that day. Visual information, charts, graphs, color code your notes in different ways. These things help engage and keep the mind actively thinking about the information presented. Another way is to avoid having students answer on the spot. Now, there may be some times where that's what you're working on, but in general, if we're learning new information, give them a chance to think about it. Personally, I like the think, pair, share option. They have a moment to think, maybe jot some notes, turn to their neighbor and talk. And then, as a whole class, after we've had some time to process the information and our ideas, then we share as a whole class. So, those are some of the strategies that we could use in our classroom to bring in both differentiation and engagement.